you transitioned from engineering to MBA.
After I did engineering, I was placed into Tata Consultancy Services. A lot of my colleagues have actually joined from NITs, IITs, and that kept me wondering. We have hired the best of the best folks in TCS, yet we are not as big as Google, we are not as big as Facebook. Analytics, you have 4 different stages. The first one is you have descriptive analytics, where you describe what things are happening. Second, you have diagnostic analytics, where you want to see what's happening and what are the causations. Then you have prescriptive analytics, which is about you want to prescribe something. And then finally you have predictive analytics.
You graduated from TESS. Now TESS is a brand. In HR, it's a brand. If you are from a branded college, you have worked hard to get there. It gives you a jump in job employment, or if you want to start a company. So did that help in the initial part of getting better jobs than your competitors in other streams?
If you are 3 to 5 years into the corporate world, or 3 to 5 years experience in, let's say, in any other field, your college matters a lot. But once you have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, the college becomes just another part of your profile. But
how does a student decide that I should go for HR?
you need to have an understanding that the culture is the most important aspects. If you hear any of the business leaders, from Jack Welch to any of the business leaders, they will always talk about the culture, they will always talk about the leadership.
Does empathy play a role if a person is empathetic or has some kind of anger towards it? Does that play some kind of role? Or
A big debate about whether HR should be more of people person, or is HR a profession?
in general, what kind of challenging situations HR faces in day-to-day things?
The biggest element is about building the leadership talent. So even though India in general has been a manpower surplus, but when it actually comes with the managerial talent, when it actually comes with the leadership talent, you will see the pool is very limited.
Hello everyone. We all have questions related to our careers. Once we complete our bachelor's, like should we go for masters immediately, get some work experience, or MBA is the best route, etc. Today, I will be having an insightful conversation with Vimal Singh, who is an HR and a graduate from the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences. We'll talk about what goes in and around the life of an HR, what kind of problems do they face, how they solve them, tackle them, how do they maintain an organization culture or maybe create it from scratch. Another thing that we'll also talk about is what kind of people should target becoming an HR, what kind of skills are also required in it. So before the video starts, please like the video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 3rd episode of my podcast. And today I have with me a new guest, someone who works in corporate, who is in HR background, and he is currently working as an HR and is also an HR analytics guest faculty. And instead of I introducing him, I'll let the person introduce himself. So please welcome Vimal Singh.
Thanks Rishi. So hi everyone, I'm Vimal Singh. I am currently working as HR strategy lead for Reliance Renewables. Prior to that, I've got multiple stints in different HR strategy and transformation roles. I have also been a strategy consultant, worked with companies like IBM, Aditya Birla Group, Lafarge. I am an electronics engineer who had done the masters from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I am 14 batch HRM pass out. I started my career in IBM as a strategy consultant. Post that, I joined Aditya Birla, Lafarge, and eventually Reliance.
Engineering, that brings me to the fact that I too am an engineer, and I have been completed in 2021, 3 years now. And you now, so I just want to know, you mentioned test. So you transitioned from engineering to MBA. So why such change? It's a very different field altogether.
See, well, there's an interesting story, Rishi. After I did engineering, I was placed into Tata Consultancy Services. There, my role was a data analyst / working in the different domains of BI. While working there, I realized most of my peers, my classmates, we used to be the cream of the different engineering campuses. A lot of my colleagues have actually joined from NITs, IITs, and that kept me wondering. We have hired the best of the best folks in TCS, yet we are not as big as Google, we are not as big as Facebook. And these companies are also operating with the best of the best talent. So what is really differentiating Facebook, Google from a company like TCS Infosys? And that's why when I started reading a lot about it, then I realized something which is more stronger in nature is called organization culture. Where you have one organization like Google and Facebook has a lot of emphasis on innovation, on building up high profitable, newer kind of solutions. And the other hand, we have a culture here where we are trying to work on efficiency. So then I started wondering, if culture is such an important element, can we actually leverage the culture? And then I started getting introduced towards organization psychology, organization behavior, what are the tangible parts, how do we control the human capital, what we call as. And since this interest kept on increasing, I started applying to different management institutes. I got through one of the best ones, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I picked up the course.
Okay, so the gap that you felt while you were working after the engineering, and that you found an organization culture that you mentioned, that became a motivation to transition from a regular engineering to that was specific in the MBA, it is HR.
Yeah, that's it.
And now I think you even mentioned that analytics something is also a very important aspect in HR nowadays. So
yeah, it is. See, now we are moving towards the data-backed decisions. So earlier, the human resources or the personal management, the older cousin of this, used to operate a lot on intangible knowledge, where a lot of these decisions would be taken on the guts. A lot of these would be done by the benchmarking. Now the business leaders are moving towards data-backed decisions. And this is slightly difficult because in human resources, there are a lot of levers which are out of the organization's control. Like what makes a person leave an organization, part of it is under the organization's employer's control. Majority of them are out of the control. Like, let me give an example. Somebody is moving across, somebody is getting married, which is something is out of the organization's control.
correct.
So how do you cater to all these different aspects is something what we started moving towards a model which takes into account these complexities and gives you a fair bit of result in terms of what makes certain trend, how could you predict certain things to happen before it happens, so that you take some diagnostic approaches. Like if you are working in an IT company, and it's a product company, where you are working on, let's say, cybersecurity, and your edge is cybersecurity. But over a period of time, let's say, you have not been able to cater to the best of the best cybersecurity experts in your organization. You have not been able to provide them the careers. They'll start moving out. But these things are predictable in nature, in terms of how well they are engaged, how they are pursuing the organization. Is there any positive association, negative association? Once you predict it out, you will be able to.
So you were mentioning about the terminologies that you mentioned. That becomes your KPI as an HR to analyze whether the employees will be continuing or what situation we are going to face and what actions need to be done.
The first one is you have descriptive analytics, where you describe what things are happening. Second, you have diagnostic analytics, where you want to see what's happening and what are the causations. Then you have prescriptive analytics, which is about you want to prescribe something. And then finally you have predictive analytics. Okay. So in HR right now, a lot of work is actually happening around diagnostic analytics, which is more in terms of simple, if I talk in engineering terms, is trying to get a causal effect relationship between certain things happening and what is the impact.
Okay. I mean, in fact, I'm more interested in the analytics. There are 3-4 points that you mentioned, the analysis part. Is that, I think, very good thing, at least for me, if I'm not wrong, because I am not aware of what HR does behind the scenes. I'm only aware of things which I see, which I interact, which is normally weekly once for me as well when I work and all. So these are good things for me and for audience as well. As a knowledge, I will definitely research more on this and what is this. Now let me do one thing. Now we understood about your part that HR plays what does. I want to go a little bit on here. When did you complete your MBA from this?
I have done my MBA in 12-14, so close to 10 years post MBA.
Okay. So now, when you graduated from TESS, now TESS is a brand. In HR, it's a brand. In that, I think it's called human psychology or something.
Human resources.
Human resources, yes. I'm very sorry. Now, did that in the initial stage, we know that, especially in our country and anywhere, it's true that if you are from a branded college, you have worked hard to get there. It gives you a jump in job employment, or if you want to start a company. So did that help in the initial part of getting better jobs than your competitors in other streams?
It definitely does. So when you have a good alma mater behind you, so it really helps you in cutting out of the crowd in terms of at least when you have the larger chunk of the population. So it definitely gives you a good jump into the different organizations, and these organizations further keeps on building up your own profile, and over a period of time all these things compound together and you have a good career. But over a period of time, once you graduate out of these prestigious institutions, be it IITs, IIMs, in my case this XLRIs, you do get a good launch into your corporate career, but in the initial part the impact is going to be more. If you are 3 to 5 years into the corporate world, or 3 to 5 years experience in, let's say, in any other field, your college matters a lot. But once you have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, the college becomes just another part of your profile. But in short, your alma mater does matter because that's how your journey has been. But over a period of time, the weightage starts coming down, and your own impact on the industry, your own network, that starts becoming more strong.
So basically, initially it's a jump, like I was saying. Then it's the person's responsibility to upgrade himself, skill-wise, build your network, go ahead and whatever they want to do in the domain, in wherever organization, whichever organization they are working in. So it's kind of a general trend. Ultimately, like I summarize, वो सिर्फ brand आपको सिर्फ थोड़ा ऊपर लेके जा सकता है. After that, it's up to you how you do it.
It's up to you.
Okay. Now here comes a very important part. You have mentioned about brand, college as a brand, skill as well. Now, in general, let's say Indian students as well, let's very honestly, even I have been that, we are not very clear with a lot of things. Generally, people take up engineering for that purposes. It's a very general trend. You have also faced, I have also faced. Now, for someone after engineering, whether they may be going for a job or maybe appearing for examinations, how does student decide that I should go for HR? As a general, you had your own journey. But if I am completely clueless. But now I'm starting to understand things after talking to you. So what kind of skills they may be having, they may not be having, should a student has or aspirant has to think that I think I should go for HR?
See, human resources is slightly complex. It's a mixture of soft skills, hard skills, and a lot of things which are happening around the industries. Now, if I take into account in finance, you have specific skill sets, like you are comfortable with the numbers, you like matching the entries, etc. You like to work according to the rules. In marketing, you want to create an impact. You are good in designing certain things. In HR, it's multiple other areas that needs to combine together. One is you need to understand that yes, there will be a general trend, but there is no one Newtonian science of a rule which covers everything. That's never there in HR. Second, you need to have an understanding that the culture is the most important aspects. If you hear any of the business leaders, from Jack Welch to any of the business leaders, they will always talk about the culture, they will always talk about the leadership. All these parts are within HR. So even if you start with a business leadership, you are inclined towards HR.
Now, culture you mentioned about company or
Organization culture.
organization. You should understand organization culture.
You should understand organization culture. So in short, you should have one. You want to learn more on psychology. You want to learn more on the causation effects. You want to learn and implement what's happening around. What are the needs of the people? You want to solve complex problems for which you don't have direct answers.
Problem solving. Okay.
You want to actually be a mediator between the management as well as the employees. Not exactly towing both the lines, but managing both of them.
Okay.
So these are complex things to have. In short, you should have some level of attraction towards psychology, social sciences, as well as comfort with, as the HR analytics is now booming up, with the numbers, causations, and all these things to actually solve the last challenge, which is the organization human capital challenge.
Okay. That's quite a good list of skills, if I am not wrong. If I reiterate, what I have noted down also that you need to understand company culture. A psychology, understanding human psychology is something very important over here. Problem solving in the point of view that you have, because you are a mediator between the upper management and the employee, that you have to be able to adjust to both of them, not taking a side, if I am not wrong. Now, just a random thought. Does empathy play a role if a person is empathetic or has some kind of angle towards it? Does that play some kind of role, or that is a very random thing that I put up?
It's actually two lines of thoughts which we always have. In fact, there is a good story behind it. While I was part of my previous organization, we had a big debate about whether HR should be more of people person, or is HR a profession. In general, yes, you have to be empathetic. It's end of the day, it's the human you are dealing with. You are not dealing with the machines. You are not dealing with the AIs. These are human emotions who have human needs. So empathy does play a part, but you don't have to be people pleasers. That's the one thing which I wanted to specify here.
Now, like you mentioned, skill-wise, I'm kind of understand people. It's understood, and I think audience will also understand. But if someone has to build it, let's just say they're getting interested, but they know I like all these things. So, what kind of reference, maybe books, or we have many online tools or reference materials as well, that you could refer or you may be using now that a student or any existing person as well can build on?
See, a lot of this human resources which we are right now dealing with actually is being built on a classical model of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So people should understand the intention, the motivations, the human drivers. So something around that, that's the first part. The second part is you need to understand that business strategy eventually also has a bigger element, which is human strategy, human capital. So how the business strategy needs to be translated into human strategy. So something around human, the organization culture. A lot of good companies have good cultures. Tata's have great culture. You have companies like IBM. You have the erstwhile GE. I should not be talking erstwhile GE. So these companies have a very strong culture. So if you read about them, and if that excites you, the kind of challenges, like I'll give you an example. When you're working for a pharmaceutical company, it's not just eventually the profits which needs to be the surmounting. You have to also need to understand that a lot of these researchers want to build and save human lives, build a molecule which eventually saves human lives. And you have to cater to that complex needs. There would be disappointments if they are not able to break through. This is not something that they are actually disappointed that their product did not sail through, because of which their final bonuses will be impacted. that may be a factor, but it would be slightly larger. That's the point I want to say. Now, so something about good cultures, something about psychology. There are good human HR leaders, which we should refer to in terms of one such leader is Ram Charan, who has been talking a lot around building good leadership pipeline, talent. Now, the biggest challenge in any of the organizations, if you look at the companies, even the companies which are now coming up, companies like startups, Zeptos and etc., is building a high performance culture. That's the biggest element. Second is building a leadership which can scale it up. And that's true for any of the established companies as well as the startups. So you have to go and learn about what kind of challenges are there in building the talent leadership. So something from Ram Charan, something from there is a very famous HR. So book references, you have to read about the psychology of motivation. You have to understand the motivation, Maslow's hierarchies of need, and something which have been built on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to read about good cultures. Companies like Tata's, GE, they have a very good culture. So read the biographies of the leaders who manage those cultures. Then you have to read, there are a lot of good material being built around by Ram Charan sir.
Okay.
So something about the talent management, building the leaders. Then there are various other journals which also publishes. There are a lot of good quality materials being published by People Matters, which is in more of an HR blog in terms of capturing what's happening in and around the world of HR. Like one of the biggest challenges 2 years back was getting back the employees return to office. That was it. That was a big challenge because a lot of people have kind of settled in their respective hybrid kind of models. So how do you get that back? So that these were actual challenges in the areas of human resources.
Okay.
And how do you keep motivated? Like right now, the other challenge which we are facing right now, the skills are changing because of IR 4.0.
Okay.
With the AI coming in. So how do you cater to the changing dynamics? So one level you have the organizations which are still having those older skills which are needed everywhere. Then you have these newer skills that need to be built up and they are happening very fast.
Okay.
So how do you balance these two out? And if this kind of challenges excites you, HR is for you.
Okay. That's a good descriptive answer for you. Now, one more thing that I could come up with here is, you mentioned about challenges, recent challenges as well. This was very specific because of COVID. We got at liberty of work from. It was a challenging situation for everyone because of the situation that was happening. Companies move for the first time, maybe realize that everything is possible right from home. Now that was the first challenge, how to come up with an online setup. IT industry was able to boom because of it. Now post that obviously offices are there, so everyone wants them back because they have the financial implications as well. Other than this, in general, what kind of challenging situations HR faces in day-to-day things, not just specific to certain scenarios that we just talked of?
See, one of the biggest element is about building the leadership talent. So even though India in general has been a manpower surplus, but when it actually comes with the managerial talent, when it actually comes with the leadership talent, you will see the pool is very limited. Very, very limited. And then you have so many corporates, the established companies, the startups, and everyone is fighting for their limited skill set. So how do you develop those leaders? How do you retain them? That's one part. Second is, how do you have the good managers? Because for a lot of us, like let's take into account what for you the organization is going to be more of what your manager and your super manager is saying, right? That's the organization for you, majorly.
Yes.
So how do we make them mature enough to handle the Gen Z, which is coming into the industry? So how do you make the how do you manage the dynamics of the different generations which are there in the industry right now?
Got it. Okay.
Third is about the changing skill set because of the IR 4.0, because of the industrial, because of the AI. So how do you cater to skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and the deployment part of it? And then you have different kind of specific challenges come up, right? Challenges in terms of, let's say, certainly, and these are general challenges. But if, let's say, if you are in again pharmaceutical industries, there the talent is limited talent, and you want to, everyone is fighting for the limited talent, and then suddenly your competitor comes with an aggressive strategy in terms of poaching up your employees. So how do you counter to that situation? Or suddenly the kind of, let's say, you are operating in an industry which has a fair bit of churning, not much, and suddenly these skill sets are useful in another booming industry.
Okay.
So how do you cater to? You're not able to match up with their compensations, but how do you retain them, because these are still critical for people for you. So these kind of challenges are always there.
And so how do you kind of approach? Let's take one example. I mean, you mentioned about a competitor, new competitor coming in. So I'm assuming it to be a funded startup.
Yeah.
Because it's a new competitor. So I mean, it's not a very, how should I say, no-brainer, because even the employee knows startup, new company, it's funded. Now product may be being developed, something will be developed. It will be in a very initial stage. Chances are you may not be working in the same company next year. So do you answer something like this? If you can answer me, if this is the correct approach that I am taking, that see, you have already a good work culture over here, it's an established company, you know the product is going to be there, we are not going to shut down something, example. But there, you may get a good incentive to work now. 1 year down the line, we don't even know that a company will work or not. Is that something that you answer? Or?
So typically it's a complex situation. I did mention about a lot goes behind the scene in terms of human decision making, which is out of the control of the companies, right? If somebody is being excited about newer company, let's say somebody wants to, some people started chasing you for Nvidia. Now that's going to be a different ball game altogether, right? So a lot depends upon what the person aspires. If the person wants wants to take a lot of risk-taking ability, the person wants to grow significantly, but don't mind putting across the work-life balance, then the answer is going to change. But long story short, you have to have a very strong employer pull. Why people still want to work for Google? Nobody has that. Have I experienced Google? No. You have? No. But the kind of culture that they have been able to build, in which you have people aspire, because that's an employer branding that they have done, that's the value proposition, that's something you carry in the society. So something around that is actually being built around. It is not something which happens on its own. There's a teams that are being working around it, there are decisions that are being working around it. So that's the area a lot of organizations work on, which provides you the employer branding, which provides you your culture, which provides you an edge, right? There are companies like Tata's, there are companies like Aditya Birla.
Yes.
These companies have their own cultures.
Yes.
So in a way that culture needs to be fostered together. Then you have the companies like, let's say, Infosys, they have their own cultures. So that needs to be brought into a certain navigable areas. And that's how, if people have emotional connect, they will never move out for some paltry gains, which I am not going to talk about. If you have an emotional connect with your work, with your company, with what you are doing in, you'll stay longer in the organization. And that's a known fact. But how do you build that emotional connect is a difficult challenge.
But with emotional connect, doesn't that situation arise of maybe an expectation that they know, they likes the work, the employee likes the work, let's give him more work, If this employee is not going to go anywhere, is that a situation that is happening, that happens?
Could happen. You have to have checks and balances.
So how do you do that?
You have to build checks and balances, right? You have employees, you have first level managers, you have second level managers, you have leaders. Your leaders have to have that strong empathy for the employees who are working there. That's it. They need to be taken care of their personal lives. They need to be taken care of in terms of their emotional needs. their financial needs, and everything needs to be taken care of by the company. So those are certain decisions that have been taken, and that how your leadership actually gives the messages to the middle management, the first line of leadership, managers, that is very critical.
So the start point of messaging.
So if your top needs to be aligned about that, I need to care about my employees, and if that is clear cut, that message cascades down very strong.
And it cascades down positively instead of going negatively.
Very, very, very positive.
Word of mouth is something that is directly visible over here.
It is.
Okay. Now, with challenges, with all the work-life culture that you talked about, there are misconceptions as well about HR. Something very common, I know you will hate me for saying this, very common, something that I hear, HR are just for fun Fridays. They just come. You have mentioned about many things that go in the behind the scenes. Now I am coming to know about it. But are these misconceptions correct that we organize fun Fridays for team building? Or maybe in India we have Rangoli competition, so people do it. So I'm not saying that they do that work, it is just a very fun dig that we take. So are there any other misconceptions that even you are aware of that you're going to talk about this? And people should know because they don't see that I'm ruling out HR because of this, because I have to do this.
See, I'll answer this question in two parts. One is, I'll take an analogy of airline industry.
Okay.
So there are front-facing roles,
Correct.
which could be front desk in the case of airlines, and it could be flight attendants.
Okay.
But that's very, very minimalistic. You have your ground staff, you have your management, you have your pilots. A lot of them, these people will not be visible. So that's pretty much the case with HR. So these are some visible roles which would be doing certain parts. So yes, there are misconceptions in terms of HR doing an artificial work, HR towing the line of the top management, HR being more of providing the gossips or something around that. But a lot of these are misconceptions.
Okay.
In a good HR professionals, you'll understand that they need to have a clear-cut business understanding and the business strategy. A lot of time they are not able to communicate that out.
Okay.
That's one. Second is, a lot of these things which are there in HR, they would only be visible when they are not there. Like if you don't have a strong leave management policy, that's why it will be visible that it is not there. So a lot of these things, till the time the infrastructure is there, people don't realize it. And a lot goes behind it. So there are misconceptions. I think as an HR fraternity, sometimes we have to blame ourselves also, because we don't publicize these complex works which we do about talent management, about performance management, where how do we make the company high performance culture? How do we make the company a strong organization design and organization structure which is scalable? A lot of these are very complex aspects, but we don't talk much about it.
Okay. That's a very good answer. In fact, I take one positive thing apart from all those things that you said. It's like you mentioned this point before as well, that is communication. So it's like HR is is kind of selling the company's values to the very employees so that they are always in check, whether they are doing the right thing, they are in sync with the company, so that they can also decide what they are doing and understand what future growth we can see.
A lot of it, yes.
Okay. Now we have covered a lot of points over here. One thing that I should have asked earlier is that you have completed, once you are completed and we are in HR, what kind of roles from entry to upper management do you expect? For example, a very common thing, I am from engineering background, I am a consultant and don't work as a proper engineer, as a software engineer. But very common thing, like if someone goes in software engineering or consultant, we have SD1, SD2, that's your progression. As a consultant, you are an associate or a junior consultant, then you become a consultant and you are a senior consultant. This is what my career progression would be in my current role. How does HR go in this direction?
See, in HR you have two distinct kind of roles. One is generalist roles. HR generalist, where you have the frontline HRs, then you have HR business partners. The designations will keep varying for HR business partners. Some of them could be, let's say, senior executive to maybe VP. Then you have HR leads, then you have HR heads, and then you have CHRO. That's the general side of it.
Okay.
5 level structures. In that you have different gradings. people keep upgrading their designations all across as they progress in their career set. That's one side. Then you have the specialist ones. Specialists like talent management. There you will have team member talent management, you will have team lead talent management, you have head of talent management.
Okay.
These are very specialized ones. So somewhere in your career you have to take a decision whether you want to specialize yourself or you want to be part of the generalist track.
Okay. This is a decision that you have to take once you are in the workforce.
But once you are in the workforce, somewhere around, typically these decisions come somewhere around when you are 4 to 5 years into the industry. That's when you have to start seeing whether you associate yourself more with the generalist work or there's something which you want to work on the specialist side of it.
There is an initial grind post your MBA in HR. That's where you completely understand what one can expect. All those diversification that you mentioned, generalist, specialist, and then you decide whether generalist is the better place for me or specialist and move ahead with that. Okay. Now, one more thing that I wanted to understand was, now, if someone is switching in HR itself, company switch or industry-wise switching, so the roles and problem statements that you are solving in, let's just say, in current organization, which is in, let's say, FMCG industry. Now you are going in a manufacturing or an IT industry, let's say, separate industry. Say you are an HR here as well, you are an HR here. The problem statement, does it change or how does it go? Or it is same but the approach is different? I just want to understand that.
It's actually all of the things which you said are partly true. One level is in terms of you have the problem statements in HR is slightly very much, how do I put it across? Some of them are general in nature, some of them are industry specific ones. So in general you would be more worried of in terms of employee relation, building your leaders, having a strong performance management, having a good culture. But the weightages is going to vary a lot. Like employee attrition is going to be a major problem in the IT, where it's a knowledge-centric roles. Vis-a-vis the established companies like core industries where the opportunities are slightly lesser. Again, a lot depends upon your business strategy. So it's a very complex aspect. But some of these are generic in nature, but you don't have in HR, you can't have one size fit all approach. So the problem statements could be similar in nature, but the solution is going to be completely different. What worked in one place, in one industry, may not work in another industry because the context completely changes. What worked in one company in the same industry may not work in the other company in the same industry because their culture is different.
Culture is different, you mentioned about it. Okay.
So a lot of time you have to understand the business strategy. Like if your company's business strategy is about reducing the cost, so your HR strategy would be in building in reducing the cost, increasing more efficiency. And here you may, even when you are facing with an attrition, you may not have the leverage of just in matching up the competitors' offers every time. Because you are also talking about the efficiency.
Okay.
Whereas when you are working in slightly different industry, which is niche in element like design industry, there you don't mind even paying somebody bit slightly more just to retain them out, so that you maintain the competitive edge.
Okay. Yes.
So same issue could have a different significance based upon the company culture, company strategy, and industry. So the stronger HR, so most of these strong HR leaders understand the business strategy, understand the business context, and apply the solution which is customized to that requirements, not cut copy paste.
Okay. That's quite a elaborative answer, and I must say, throughout this interaction, I've got to understand a lot about HR, not just HR, in general what goes behind, which I had no clue about. Then, in fact, if I'm being honest, I will have to listen to recording once again before I even complete the editing and uploading part, because I will do some more research from my end as well. Now, I think this is from the core crux of what we're talking. It's great. let's come a little back to what about your personal life as well. I know you, so you have mentioned that post MBA as well, you were looking for administrative services. UPSC was a phase that you were attempting. So how does this? You already transitioned from engineering role to MBA, HR, to specific, because you understood a gap and you wanted to work on it. Now, what was the story of trying for a UPSC? I'm definitely guessing IAS and IPS is something that you were targeting. What was going through that phase that you thought about this?
See, coming from an institute like TATA Institute of Social Sciences, you understand there are a lot of communities, there are a lot of people who are not as privileged as we are. And there are two different kinds of India and Bharat. A lot of these stories which we see is specific to the Indian growth story but may not be translating into Bharat. So I started getting towards solving those ground level problems. In HR, obviously I will be able to give back to the industry which have a positive impact in terms of economic growth, the taxation which gets indirectly being fed back to the society. But through this route, I thought I will be able to give a lot more direct contribution towards the society, a lot more upliftment to the society which I would be able to do. So that's the reason I went for Union Public Service Commission. Kind of gave 4 interviews. Had a lot of learnings which I still carry to those days, which somewhat gives me an edge compared to a lot of other professionals in my own area, in the different other areas.
So that studying phase of UPSC was also a learning curve. You may not have got the result that you wanted, but it's giving you learning and you're implementing in your current work, what you're doing.
Exactly. So let me put an example. Something which I read a lot about is macroeconomics. In terms of how the industry operates in general, what are the business cycles, what are the government spending, how does the bank rate has an impact on the overall industry, the interest rate and the inflation, unemployment, all these things. It gives me an edge in terms of even before predicting what the general economy is going to be like, which phase of the economy we are right now in, and based upon that I will be able to put a slightly more applied solution to the challenge rather than just taking out what people are doing and just copy pasting that. And that's one example. I was introduced to multiple other areas. So that gives me an edge in terms of even identifying what are the new growth avenues like renewable energies. Before I took this job of renewable energy, obviously I had some other offers in my hand. But I knew back then that renewable energy is a sector that's going to boom.
Okay.
And that fair bit of understanding actually came from when I had prepared for the examinations.
Okay, that's a very good practical answer, I will say. In fact, you have been giving us a lot of insights of your life and your understanding. I'll give you a small insight of mine. I follow YouTube a lot. There is a channel called Think School. I'm not aware if you are aware of this channel or not.
I will check this out.
Definitely check it out because I'm not promoting it, but this is something. It's just not. They are someone who are educating the Indian audience specifically about business case studies, and they have people or case studies, company case studies, industry case studies, even the administrative services people who mention about the challenges like you mentioned about things. So I'll definitely from my side take this up and definitely follow this channel.
Sure,
I will send you the link. Although it's not a promotion, there is no promotion here. Last question is now you have also told me before the meeting was that you have worked for startups and guided them as well. So what was that thing? Or what all things that you managed over here?
So I've been guiding one startup. It's a PropTech startup. The founder is from IITB. This is Sigma Value.
Okay.
Now here the role that was being given to me and I was supporting them more in terms was from the digital marketing and the strategy side. In terms of what should be the go-to-market strategy, which areas we should be focusing on, how should we scale it up, what kind of messaging we should be sending it across. So this startup has been there for in existence for quite some time. It is now right now close to I believe 10 employees are working in that specific set of startup, and associated companies close to 30-35.
It's a funded startup or
It's a bootstrap.
Okay.
So in terms of they obviously they already had their own niche, but they wanted somebody to actually come and help them in guiding them up in terms of what should be the decision path they should be taking, what are the immediate priorities for them. So I've actually helped them in guiding and identifying those priorities.
So product, a little bit of insight in the same thing. You mentioned strategy, digital marketing. Now digital marketing definitely not product side first. You have the company and how they are going to sell it.
Yeah.
Okay. And strategy wise, your regular HR or business part?
See, a lot of these, I work in the organizational design, where you have to have a very good understanding of the business strategy. So in terms of, so that exposure has always helped me in terms of looking more than the HR strategy, the complete business side of it. So obviously I was able to apply in terms of when you're scaling up, what should be your few parameters. Like in this case, we've been trying to improve the revenue first, not looking at the profitability initially.
Okay.
Once you become the scale, you have a decent scale, then you will be able to have you will move towards more efficiency. But the initial part of the grind is going to be towards getting more top line right now.
Correct.
So that's something which I have been able to learn with a lot of exposure coming in. And when this is a slightly niche industry, so this was more of a challenge which helped me in challenging my own assumptions, because I was coming with my own set of assumptions, how the things work and how the things have been done. But when I saw this industry, it was a different kind of ball game altogether. What I initially thought as a challenge was not actually a challenge. And what I saw as a communal aspect became a big challenge.
Okay.
So how do you solve that out? And in between I learned a lot of good new skills.
So unlearning your previous understanding must have been an important aspect here, and then again working on it and building over it, and okay, whatever it worked there, maybe it's not working over here. New things, new industry, new set of things.
Yes.
That's amazing. In fact, I love interacting with all this information that I've got today. And thank you for coming to my podcast, although it's a very initial one, and giving us your thoughts, your insight into the HR world and what you have been up to. So, really thank you for that.
Thanks Rishi for having me over here.
That's a wrap from this episode, everyone. What an insightful conversation I had today with Vimal. From knowing the insights of the life of an HR, what kind of problem do they solve, how do they go about in their jobs, how do they inculcate and maintain an organization culture, the skills that they have to work on, they have to develop over the time, specializations, etc. To all the people who stayed till the end, thank you. Please like the video if you haven't already. Share it with your friends and peers who can gain insights from this episode of our podcast. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.